All right. How you doing today, Ansh?
Not bad read. Thank you very much.
Yeah, absolutely. We managed a pretty seamless transition between one and two, so I'm happy about that. Like there's a few, few logistical things today, so I'm just a little congratulating this thing just a bit because I'm glad so far things have relatively gone out without a hitch. And I really want to thank you for also just taking an opportunity to present with us today. Uh, just talking to you a little bit. And I know I got your name from Stefan over at the who helps along with me to run the local modern Excel user group, and you've had a really cool topic on SharePoint and everything else that I think as I mentioned in the last video, I didn't really realize like there was a way to change kind of how the structure comes through as the library, and I get excited when I actually get to learn something new because I try to do a pretty good job on being knowledgeable. So it's like the more knowledgeable you get, the less opportunities you have to kind of be amazed at something, and I think that's going to be one of the cool things that I'm very much looking forward to today. Before we get started, just because some people might only be tuning into this one versus the other one, I'll go through a little bit of logistical conversations about the event, and then I'm happy to get into what you'll be talking about. So let me.
Sure.
There we go. All right. So again, for people tuning in for the first time, this is part two of a Power BI Days event. Yesterday was hosted by Greg with CSG Pro. Those links will be up in a few weeks on his CSG Pro channel. And when they do, I'll have those down in the description. I just finished a presentation on visualization magic. If you want to check, that's also going to be on my YouTube channel to watch later. This will be the last presentation of the day here by Ansh. And just please, if you enjoy these talks, we encourage you to share the Power BI Days hashtag or the videos themselves. Not only does it help stand up us, the organizers and the presenters, but it also continues to help promote Power BI Days, which is a great kind of by the people for the people organization ran by an MVP over in Europe, and it's something that I want to continue to see to grow. So I'm highly encourage you to do that. As I mentioned, there we go. Yeah, Ans, you'll be talking about must-know ways to integrate Power BI with SharePoint. So if you'd like, we can maybe talk a little bit about like what we'll be discussing today, and then maybe getting into those demos.
Sure. I actually kept a slide ready just for this scenario. And first of all, before I even begin, I wanted to say thank you to you, Reed, and Greg for having me. It is definitely a honor to be among the greats and the legends of Power BI. So
Thank you.
once again, very much thank you for having me, and thank you to all the viewers who are there with us. And it really does motivate those like me who are new and upcoming and who want to learn more about Power BI. So it's awesome and great to be here.
We have
Without
50.
first,
I was just going to say
yeah,
51 concurrent viewers at the moment, so a good solid number there that are tuning in, which is fantastic.
awesome. Thank you. That's nice. All right. So what I wanted to go over is how to integrate SharePoint and the file stored in the SharePoint with the Power BI. And I know this is one of those tasks and asks which I have been asked upon many times at my workplace and in the past, where it is such a versatile way to use SharePoint, but really having a good understanding what we are getting, what level access do we have? Do I have access to the entire SharePoint site, or a folder within it, or just a particular file within it? And
And just a
Power
quick
BI
question for
does,
you is, do you want me to show the slide at the moment?
yes,
Okay.
by all means,
Yeah, let
by
me
all
go ahead
means.
and flip over to that.
So these are the different scenarios as I was mentioning earlier. One is, do you want to just get a data from an individual file, or do you want to get from the entire folder, all the files within a folder? Sometimes there's a need to get just the file which was latest updated with the latest information in there, and also the date when it was updated. How we can make use of parameters within Power BI to dynamically fetch it, as well as change the parameters to now point to a different location or different folder and yet get the same results. And finally, one of my personal favorite, which I stumbled upon while just working so much into the Power Query aspect, that I said, okay, I really have now a way and a good understanding how to get the data from a file which is consistently changing, and especially the headers that's changing. And I'll show you exactly what that is. For me, it was little challenging initially, but once I grasped the concept, I thought many of us can use it or may have a need to, in the day-to-day life where they can actually make use of this scenario.
Perfect.
So with that, let me first and foremost share my the data set that I've prepared. So I've just some sample Excel sheets where uh, pretend this is my working file where all the data is being dumped into, which has two dimensions
Before
and
you do that,
project.
can you just like for 20 seconds just talk about the awesome background that you have on your on your desktop? I think it's fantastic, honestly.
This one is one of my
Yeah.
personal favorite. And the reason is this because I want to wake up and work and feel this that the only thing that I have, the only power that I have is I'm not going to give up till I get to the bottom of this or till I learn something. And Batman happens to be one of my favorite characters. And I remember one time I and my friend had a discussion that who is the greatest superhero of all times, and I said Batman, and he said he has no powers. I said exactly that's why a person with no powers yet is able to walk with the greats is indeed powerful enough. So that's why I like to keep this background for me.
No, I love that, and you know, it gives a little hint into just like the types of motivation that you want to give to yourself. So I think that's great, and I like comic books, so I definitely geek out on superheroes.
Nice. That's other thing that we have in common now. Not only the Power BI yet.
Exactly.
Awesome.
Perfect.
All right. So as I was saying, this is a sample data where I have project and project code, all different types of project. We are tracking their, for example, let's say utilization or completion or what have you. You can think of this as whatever you want to think as 20% completion or 20% pending. It's just a fact about it. And the good part here is the days or the weekly update that happens after every meeting. This particular header will get updated after every 7 days. So after after 7 days they would come in, they'll still keep using the same sheet, but as the week progresses the values get changed, and they want to keep an updated. Is there a way for me to create a report in Power BI showcasing that and always show the updated header that changes with time, with over time? So that is the last one which I would want to show. Before that, let us start with a very basic one, which is how do you get a how do you get data from a file which is stored in SharePoint, and if you have access to only one Excel sheet? So assuming that one of your colleagues shared a file with you, Excel sheet, it's a SharePoint online, so it's Excel online. You see the report, you see, okay, everything looks good. Now I want to connect to that particular file, and what I've noticed over and over again and many times is user going to the particular file, and let's say this is my file, I open it here, and they grab this URL and using thinking that, okay, if I use this URL and connect to my Power BI directly, it would fetch me the result. But it's not true entirely. There are things that we need to change with this file, and I want to show you that. So with that, let me just go directly to, I'm just going to close and apply, let it load so I can restart the entire process from the scratch, so that way I do not miss anything. Awesome. So now, as most of you are already doing it, I do this. It's a one of the good practices that I picked up over the many months and years of working in Power BI. I never go and get data here. I immediately go to Power Query Editor because almost always there is some sort of transformations that I have to do no matter what, and this is where I
Hmm.
always go and start fetching my data from. So if I go to New Source and I go to Web, and this is the most instance that I've seen users use, and they come here, they grab this particular link, they paste it, thinking that, hey, it's a web source, I have a URL, I should be able to connect to this, and there you go, you have this error. What this error basically means that the URL that I did provide is indeed incorrect to some extent, not entirely invalid, but to some extent it's invalid. So the one way which you can rectify that very easily is grab that URL, and I'm going to put it right below there so I can show you side by side comparison. So this is a URL that I got from my just the file itself. And if you'll notice, there is a X and R X and colon R. This is what is causing that issue, because this is considered a private space, and hence you're not allowed to do that. The right way, or the one right way to go about is open this particular file in your desktop app. It will ask you that, do you really want to open this in Excel app? And say, yeah, I do want to. And there's only one thing we need from your, honestly, and that is you go to file, you go to info, and you will copy the path for this particular file. Go back to your notepad, and I'm just going to paste that. So now, as you can see, this URL is very different from the one which I was getting originally from my SharePoint. And all I need to do is remove everything, or the query parameters after the question mark. So this is the URL that I will be now needing or requiring within my Power BI. And again, same process, go to web. It
Yeah, a
should
lot of
open
people
the
don't
dialog
really
box.
realize that there's a, I would assume there's like a copy path directly from when you can open it in Excel versus, even for me, like the majority of the time, I generally just try to grab and then parse out from the URL, before any of the query parameters, the root URL that I need to. And then it's kind of a matter of sometimes trying it. Okay, wait, nope, it says invalid. Hack off a bit. Okay, now it says valid.
Exactly.
Okay, like yeah, you kind of have to just chop it up and until you kind of find the right part because it's
The
not
right.
yeah. So this is a very clean method to do that.
Yeah, and I, again, since it's an Excel sheet, I always look for that extension XLSX, and till that point, I know this is indeed the file with the right extension, and everything after that, I'm just going to ignore it and chop it off. So once you have that, click OK, and you should be able to see the connection just fine in a moment. And this is a error that says it only supports anonymous credential, which is just fine. All it is saying is the privacy level is anonymous for this particular file. There is no organizational privacy level, or there's no private, there's no public. It is just an anonymous privacy level check, and which is fine. And I'm able to get my data in a new query. And I'm just going to quickly rename it so that I do not get confused which one is what. All right, so this is required, or this is preferred method if in case of those scenarios when you're only given an access to just the Excel sheet and you do not have enough privileges to go to the root folder of the SharePoint itself. So in that case, this is the only way, and which in my opinion has never failed me so far of me working with SharePoint and Excel sheet. So I always trust this method. Now, building on to that, we'll go to the next one. How do I get data from the entire folder, which is actually easier than doing all of this, what we just did. Again, I'll go to more connections, and I'll actually find my SharePoint file as my connector, or SharePoint folder as a connection. Notice this says SharePoint folder, which I think is a misnomer in many ways, and I'll tell you why I feel that way. The moment I click connect, this is going to actually ask me for a URL for my SharePoint site. Again, I'm going to navigate to my SharePoint site, and I can just grab it from here, which is SharePoint shared location. Oops, not the last S. You could have very well also written that in Notepad and just grabbed it as well. So whatever works for you, that would be great. This will actually give me list of every single thing that is present in that particular shared folder. Even though it says shared folder, I was assuming and hoping that I would only see a list of all the folder structure, as you see in your Windows Explorer, 5 folders and the files within it. But this gives me every single thing there is. And I was working with one of my client, and they had over 500 or 1,000 files, and it was hard for me to pinpoint which one it is. And they were all named very similar with the final extension with a different name. And I said, I need to find a better way to do that. And then I stumbled upon this scenario where I actually use the SharePoint folder connector. I go to the mQuery and I replace files with contents. What this does is this will actually give me a much more manageable folder structure where I know where my files would be. So within my SharePoint, I know all my data is stored within the shared document folder, which is this one. And if I go here, this is my shared document folder. The moment I click on this table, it will again give me all the folders that I have currently as I see them in my SharePoint. So if I go to my documents, these are all the folders that I have. And I'm able to see exactly the same thing in my Power BI too. So it's kind of a mental mapping for me that yes, I'm in the right location. I know which folder I need to go to and which item I need to fetch from. And again, I always rely on my source, and this I've again learned in a hard way or in a good way as well. Always follow the source. Source will never lead you wrong. So this is my
Yep.
source. I'm going to go back to my SharePoint and I'm going to say which one I'm actually looking for. So I'm looking for SP test one. And I have two files located inside. So the moment I find my SP test one, and click on the table, I should see only two files. And lo and behold, I see only two files here. So I know my method works and it is able to connect. I'm able to connect and fetch my information the correct way. So I would recommend using this approach. Not that the other one is wrong, it's just that it does become tedious and it is easy to make a mistake. And the last thing we want is worrying about, am I even working with the right data set after you have created 20 different measures and realize, oh, it's wrong all along. So I would definitely go this route and make life a little easier, you know.
Well, I mean, and this was again one of those things that I didn't actually know. I knew of the contents thing. I never really explored it because the other method isn't, as you say, it's not broken. It's just not as intuitive to navigate. And I don't connect to
Absolutely.
SharePoint often enough, I think, for my data sources that I ever looked at other options. But now that I see that, like that's 100% the way I'm gonna to navigate to a folder or a file going forward. It's like, oh, this just makes it so easy to drill in and just get to the right spot versus you have to get the navigation path and all those other clunky stuff. So that was like my takeaway. Just okay, that's cool. That is 100% now a best practice I'm going to implement. Just such a
Awesome.
small change and huge payoff.
Definitely. No, I completely agree with that. And it has never failed me. So I would you'll fall in love with this method. Definitely. I'm sure of that. All right.
Perfect.
And one more thing that I like to do, even though if it is not a ask by my managers or if it's not something that I am intentionally trying to show on my report, I always want to see that if my source is indeed an Excel sheet located in the SharePoint folder, how frequently that user actually updated my data set, which is in this case the Excel sheet. This is different from when my data set was actually refreshed, which happens in the Power BI service. That tells me when was the last time it went and made that call to SharePoint and got any new data back in. Or if I have a scheduled refresh, it tells me on this day and this time I had a scheduled refreshes. None of those tell me when did Reed go in and he updated a value in particular cell. It doesn't tell me. So what I do is the moment I come to this stage, I actually leave this query as is and I actually say last date, because now I have access to multiple columns here which are actually the date accessed, date modified, and the date created. If I was to go and make any changes to one of those files, it will actually show here. So let us go that and quickly do it, just to see if this is indeed working as I think it is working. So I'm just going to make that 1000 or maybe just make it whatever, some number. That's again, this is not the important piece of that there. So I just updated my Excel sheet in SharePoint. That's fine. I
Hmm.
have some new data. I'm just going to click refresh and the first one should have updated at a different date. Initially, it was both 17 because this is UTC time again, so it is going to take the time difference there. So this one just shows that this particular file was just updated. That gives me an idea. Now I can show it on the report that, hey, when was the last time you updated the data? This number or this particular value in the field I can use in within my visualization if I want to. So I just leave this as it is, and then I do a reference to the same query that was there before. And then I go and fetch my actual data. And this is what I'll be using for my modeling aspects. This is where my data resides. This is what I'll be performing my modeling on. And my last date can always stay as is to give me the information about it. So I think that is again a cool thing that I use, which have helped me and served me well. kind of gives you a
Hmm.
last update, last data refresh date. And the good part here is it also kind of gives you kind of a quality check. When was it last created, and was there any newer version it was created, and that will change too. So you are able to always see what has happened with your data source or data set itself.
Looks like Teresa was asking if you could just show that one more time.
Sure. So the moment I go to my source, I have my file. I go to my
Hmm.
share documents. Let me actually delete this one so I can go step by step again. Share documents. Within the share document, I should have only two files in SP1. At this point, all I'm doing is navigating within my SharePoint folder as I would normally do.
Hmm.
Just SharePoint, just like the same thing, right? Once I'm at this stage, I know these are my two data sets. I will leave this query as is. I'm not going to touch it. I'm not going to modify it. I do not even remove the columns here because I have had a ask where they wanted a link to this particular file within my Power BI report. So having a predetermined link always works just great, right? So it tells you where it is located, what's a folder. So all this information is indeed metadata, and which I just leave it there and gives me the good information. So is this what you were asking, Teresa? Coming to
I
this
think
stage and just leaving it?
that's what I'm assuming, but I'll let you know what she says in the chat.
Okay,
Yeah, it's even from here too is the nice part. You have a modified and created, so you can even create KPIs to actually look. As an
exactly.
example, if this file should be getting updated every 30 days, you could create a flag that would basically identify what's the date difference between the two, and that could go to a card. I'm still waiting. I would love the day where KPIs can be created for alerts and a report, but at least on a dashboard, you can have a card that if this number say ticks above 31, then you can get a notification to an email, and then that basically
Exactly.
informs the person, hey, by the way, your data is stale. This file hasn't been updated yet. So there's definitely ways
Exactly.
to turn this into some type of intelligent monitoring as well.
This is other good thing that you brought up, Reed. What I had to implement one time was KPIs work on a threshold value. Once you alerts, not KPI, but the alerts work on the threshold value. Once you cross that threshold, you will get a message saying that, hey, you have exceeded or you have reached your goal. How would I notice someone that, hey, someone has updated the information in the source itself? This is where using the time intelligence tells me that when my threshold has been reached. So this is a cool way to integrate this into our alerts, which is in Power BI service, to show another cool insight that, hey, your file is ready to go. It got refreshed and it got updated. So you can play around with this and get many insights out of it.
Exactly.
All right, so that was that. And now if you would notice, this is the same a file that I had where the headers were changing. We'll come to that, and I just want to see if I have not adding a parameters. Let us do that first. I like parameters a lot. All right, so as you know, I have two I have two files in same folder, SP test one, and I want to change dynamically which particular file I am fetching every time. I do not want to create two different reports. Rather, I want to show two different connection. If I have a need to do so, I should be able to switch between file A and file B. The requirement here, I would go and say that the schema should be same, otherwise your modeling will break or your measures will break. Assuming that all those schema is intact and it is consistent throughout, parameters is a great way to decide and define where are you actually going and fetching the data from. So just for parameters demo, I'm going to make this one little cleaner and make our header, promote these as a header. Now for the parameters, all I need to change within my mQuery is one and one thing. It says right here, I need to go to DD1A XLSX. That is my particular sheet name, because this is where my source is coming from. I could have a parameters predefined where I can rename or I can name a list of values that will contain DD1A and DD1B, and allowing me to do a switch between, do I want to fetch from 1A or do I want to get a from 1B. So let us quickly see that, and it's pretty straightforward. So I'll go with a new parameter and I'll just say, and this I'm going to leave it any, and I'm going to just leave it list of that. And what I do before that, I always follow my notepad, my trusty notepad. What I do is I just copy this because I do not want to even make a mistake in. All right. So now I'm going to create quickly a new parameter. This is going to be my list of value. I'm going to save this one and I'm going to copy the other one and save that. I'm going to always choose a default value of 1 and current selection I'm going to leave as also default as A.
Once you're done with that too, I have an interesting question that was posed into the chat. I answered it a little bit. It's just around general like performance related to connecting the files into SharePoint. So you can either answer that now if you want me to throw it up, or we can wait until you're finished with this demo.
I can have a look at the question quickly.
Yeah, let's see. Here it is. I'll throw it up on the window. There you go.
Sure.
Is there best practices for carrying out transformations in SharePoint? We have reports that use this. The report refreshes are frustratingly slow. It's kind of just like whether or not it's on-prem or anything else, when you connect to flat files, it's going to be slower, especially when you're doing a folder combined. Sometimes that's the only way to connect to it, but most best practices anyway about minimizing steps, not repeating, a lot of the standard best practices in Power Query will still apply. It's just going to run slower. Other than just saying try to minimize transformations as much as possible, and if any way that you can have your Excel files be cleaner from the get-go, as far as pivots and unpivots and all that other stuff, that's my number one recommendation. I'm curious on your thoughts though on this as well.
No, I agree with that too. Especially pay attention to your applied steps because um,
Yeah.
any applied step that changes the schema of a table or current table that you're working with cannot be combined. For example, if I do 3 different merges between 2 or 3 different files, I cannot, and you'll notice too in the applied step, those merges will actually list out separately, merge 1, merge 2, merge 3. The reason being because those are the ones which change the schema in some way. But any other applied step, for example, renaming it, right? Those are the applied step which can be grouped and combined together. So what I find
Mm-hmm.
myself is I would first go and change all the schema at one go because I know I cannot do anything about it. I cannot reduce them. I cannot go away without them. And then I systematically take a approach of combining all those that I can group together. So that
Yep.
way, applied step with the 60 or 50 or 60 steps can definitely be go down to 30 or 35. And that in turn allows your Power BI to query your source that quickly and do those transformations that quickly. So those are the things that I do. And as Reed said, all the applied steps, all the other transformation best practices are very well applicable when
Yeah.
fetching data from a SharePoint. Yeah.
And I have one quick follow-up, and I'll just throw a quick 2 cents on here. Could you do the transformations in data flows to make the refresh faster? I mean, it's not really making it faster. If your Power Query takes 10 minutes in Power BI Desktop, and you put that into a data flow, that data flow is now going to take 10 minutes. Yes, when you connect data to the data flow, you're going to get because that data has already been pre-processed and dumped into there. That refresh is going to be faster, but the 10-minute query still has to run somewhere. So
Exactly.
it really doesn't matter too much between the two. The one advantage I would just say to data flow is if this transformed and clean table needs to be used by more than one model, absolutely put that into a data flow and then use that across different PBIX models that are in there. But as far as performance goes, you're not increasing your performance. All you're doing is moving it to a different part in the stream, but it's still going to take the same amount of time. So just my little comment on that,
Yeah.
and you're welcome to chime in if you had anything else.
Yeah. No. Adding on to that, the real use or the real value of data flow is when you're trying to standardize your master data model from
Yeah.
which other reports will be queried upon. If you ever find yourself in that scenario and you you may want to still prefer Power BI Desktop. I still prefer this. I do all my steps here and then copy the M code and paste it in Dataflow, and it just works just as it is. So if that is a need where you want to do a centralized reporting and create a model, do that in the Dataflow, because it can have its own cadence of refresh. But the actual query time to go fetch that data, do the transformation is almost going to be same between Power BI Desktop and the Power BI data flows. It's just a different way of what you do afterwards matters, and that's where I think the data flow comes in handy.
Exactly. Perfect. Thanks for the input.
All right, so coming back to my parameter, I know I have a fixed value of 1a. I'm just going to call it params if I've renamed it correctly. And check that real quick. Give me one. I do have a params here. Is this the one? Was this the one? I believe so. Later. All right, so in this particular data too, I don't know why I didn't do that on the data one, but in this one, I just added parameter or params, and this is nothing but now it is going to take the query that has been based on my parameters. Right now, it is taking values from the DD1A, and I can very well come here and change it. And I didn't mean to do that, and I just do that, and this is now going to go to 1B. So it's easy to switch between two files if they are within the same folder by using parameters. Now we want to extend this, assuming now I have two different folders, each folder containing two different files, but of the similar schema. So how do I change between two different folders of SharePoint itself? Well, that can also be done. And if you were to notice within our mQuery, it did one very cool thing, which is it actually identified which folder this is coming from. So all I need to provide here is which particular parameter or folder it is going to go from. So again, I'll go and create one more parameter, and I'll actually name it better. Param folder. I'm going to say list of values. Test1. I know is that's one folder within my SharePoint. And this is my going to be second one. Default, let us leave at 1. And right now I also want it to be 1. Oh, I went on the parameter. I need to go to the actual file. I believe it is param folder. Yes. Is it param folder? Speed test 1.
I do love the auto IntelliSense that they have for Embed. Sometimes
Yes,
it's not always perfect.
it is not, because it actually tells you where it is coming from, where it is going to.
Yeah.
So I like that one. SP test 2, this one looks fine. This is the params, and name is, yeah, name is correct as well. And I'm going to get that particular one, and let us see why it is not work.
Looks like there's an issue with SPS_1.
S Did I not rename that correctly? Oh, absolutely, that is the issue. Let me quickly change that. Edit. It is not _1. It is just one. SP test.
There we go.
And the good part with the Power Query is, and I've read many times and I've seen many times where is mQuery really required for one to master Power Query? In my opinion, I have not mastered it, but you can see all the errors once you go through it, read through it, and you understand, oh, this is what it is, and you can immediately figure
Yeah.
out what is really going on.
Exactly. I mean, I would even say like the same, honestly, the same for me with with Power Query and even with like tabular editors, for many years like I know just enough M to accomplish the goals that I need. And you start out with just using the buttons, and you slowly learn a little bit here and there to combine two applied steps into one. And because you can get 99% of the way through most transformations just using the user interface. It's pretty rare where you need to like, unless you start dealing with parameters and other stuff, that you need to start really digging into to the code.
And what I'm just adding right now are the two different files stored in a different SharePoint folder. That's why if you see the error here, it's not finding that because the names of my files residing within my two different SharePoint folders are
Yeah.
actually indeed different. So once I update that, and I'm going to check, because I'm in that one, I'm going to choose 1A final and dd underscore 1A final, dd underscore 1A underscore final. Yeah, this is correct. And this one, I'm going to choose that, and sp test 2. I'm going to go back and rename that one to 1. And this one would be, yeah, let's refresh it once. Oh, I'm still choosing the final. I need to choose this one. This should refresh it just fine. And there you go. So every time we
Perfect.
have a folder and the Excel sheet, so basically two levels of parameters, that means two different folder structure I should be having in that. So that is how I use parameters. Again, I've seen when people use parameters initially, they define it initially. I take the other approach where I first define my query string and then go back and kind of reverse engineer it, that which particular part of my query is requiring a parameter. So that's the approach I take. Again, it's a kind of a fail safe that I can cancel it and go back to what's before.
Exactly.
Right. So with that, the last thing that I do want to show is changing this dynamic headers, which I believe would be of a value to many of us. Before I do that, again, since this is spread across all the columns, the best way to model this is I'm going to unpivot them. So if you notice here, I'm not bringing this particular first row as my headers at this point, because I really do not want these to be my headers yet, because even though they are headers in my original Excel sheet, I want these, and because these will be changing dynamically, I'm going to treat them as my values, which are going to change over time. So I'm just going to leave column 1, column 2, and I'm going to unpivot other ones. And if you will notice, no, did I, this one and this one, and unpivot other columns. Perfect. Now from here, I like to make extensive use of references, headers. From here, I'm going to actually just keep this column and this column attribute and value, because all I really need, and if you notice closely, is for each project code, whatever it may be, column 3 to column 8 are repeating, which are nothing but I honestly just want, instead of column 3 to column 8, all I need here is my dates, and I want
Hmm.
my values to stay intact. So I'm going to do a little bit of formatting here, where I'm just going to keep my top 6 rows, and this is just however you want to manipulate your data is definitely up to you.
Yep. And I know there's like also ways to dynamically kind of like to detect is date and some other stuff to add a bit of intelligent filtering and things like that.
Exactly. Now all I'm going to do is I'm going to do a merge on this column. Um, and
Hmm.
again, I prefer merge always as new, because I do not want to change the integrity of my original table. So I'm going to leave that there. I'm going to leave this one, and this is going to be just the headers, column to column. Everything should be matching. And at this point, I will see the date coming for that. And over here, I'm again going to top 6 rows, I believe. This approach, I found this to work well for me in case, again, I can let me remove these two. We do not need them, remove these columns. So for each project code, I have the amount and I have the date on which project was updated, right? So at this point, this is easier if I just go ahead and rename my column right in this instant. But what I found is I had to work with 126 column Excel sheet where 126 were just the descriptive data, and then there were another 150 or so or 160 or so altogether columns where remaining were all factual information. So I didn't feel like, me being a lazy coder, I didn't feel like renaming every single column to match to what my Excel sheet says. So
Yep.
what I ended up doing is I also harvested just the headers for each and every unique record I had, and I just saved as a header schema, and I would just append on top of my header schema. And this is a concept which I honestly borrowed from those who have worked with Azure Data Factory. There is a way when you connect Azure Data Factory, and when you connect a pipeline, there is a way which says, what is a schema? Do you want to import a schema? And the schema should exactly be just the header names. So I borrowed that idea here, applied it, and it worked fine. So I was able to append all my values under my header column just instantly. And it also gave me an advantage of validating is my queries right, or am I doing it correctly or not. So that is one way where you are able to you know make use of multiple things come together. And honestly, it's very, very cool feature to do so. So this one, because these are only 4, I'm just gonna rename them right here. Project code, and this is basically, I'm just gonna leave it value, and this is my date. Value is going to be my whole number, date's gonna be date, and there you have it. So if something was changed in this particular file, anytime they will go update this information, associated dates will change and our values will get updated too. I
Perfect.
think that is what I had planned for the day. Any questions, feel free to ask if anyone has any questions.
I do have a couple.
Yeah.
If you have anything else, you're welcome to. We still have about 15 minutes left as well.
Something cool that I have done recently in SharePoint and Excel. Let me think of that.
Yeah, and let's
I think the
also.
biggest.
Well, I'll say like let's if we can get to the question first, and then yeah, you're welcome to hop
Sure.
into something. But yeah, Damien had a really good one about can the parameter list be dynamic and get a list of files from a folder? I've personally not done that.
Can the parameters be dynamic even where I can get a list of files from a folder?
I mean,
Theoretically, yes. I've not done it.
yeah,
I want to do so as a demo too for you guys one day. And yeah, I definitely want to do that. But
and
theoretically speaking, it can be done.
yes, and I'll say is like I'm thinking through when I've done something like this, and back when I built my Google Analytics report, which is an app source, one of the things that I wanted to do is so people didn't have to type their view ID in. If they logged in, I do recall creating a parameter that actually fetched the list of view names or IDs from Google using their credentials, and basically put that into a dropdown that you could select from. The problem is that the parameters in Power BI for the pop-up for AppSource at the time did not support dropdown lists. So the limitation wasn't because the parameter couldn't fetch a dynamic list that people could select from. It's just that that feature was not available for that. They had the only options was a blank text field or a number field to type in. So I would think for this, similarly, yes, you should 100% be able to create a parameter of that. It would be a few steps, but you definitely can, supply it with the data from, basically a list in Power BI in here that's queried something from SharePoint to then turn that into a selection list of what to pick from rather than having to type it in manually. Very doable, but it sounds like neither myself or us have done that directly. All right. So something like that, yeah. You actually want to see if you
I'm trying
can,
to.
yeah. I forget exactly. I don't think you can just, yeah, yeah. Oh, there you go, query, and then list of names. So
This is what I just want to convert this into a query if I am able to do so. I think we are in business.
To table on the left, convert to table.
Uh, no, I want to, it was in table. I want to convert into a query because parameters usually will only accept a query suggested values. I could have any value which is random, list of
So,
values which is I provide, and I want a
mhm.
query. So I want to convert that into a query and last state 3, which is, yeah, which is indeed this one. Sorry, my bad. This can be done. So answering your question, can it be done? Yes, it can be done. So
So
there you
so
go.
so so click it
Dynamic.
let's click it and actually show it though. Like I want to see
Sure.
the end result just so we can get the satisfaction of that. So not in this on
Yes.
the query. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I will change that as well. I don't want list of values. I this time want a list, a dynamic list, and whatever the current value I want to provide.
Hmm. And then now that drop down, when you get the pop up, I believe should give you that option, right?
Yes, and this
Hmm.
one does actually require a. I was hoping to see a
Yeah.
drop-down menu right here, which would let me choose one of those names that I actually do have.
If
So
there's
let me
anything
go
else
back
that
to
you wanted
panel.
to, I was gonna say if you wanted, I can also just I can do a quick Google while you're maybe showing something else, and I can see if that actually is. I feel like there's got to be at least one blog post that talks about that because I'm sure that I came across how to do this when I built mine a few years ago.
Got it. Okay. Let me see one thing real quick. If I have a transformation to change into a query, because I know a list of query will allow me to pass these values in from a parameter from any list that I choose from. I don't know. That'll be a good one to find out actually if this can be passed dynamically. So there'll be something cool I'll also learn myself.
Yep.
Anyways, to bringing this continuing on the parameter scenario, one way I've done is when you're connecting or creating a template apps or anytime you're providing the actual connection string, a few things that I learned is you cannot have text as a data type for your parameters. It will just not validate yourself. So as a safer side and as a safe bet, I almost always go with any, even if that value or the connection string, or even if it is just a numeric number, I forcefully connect it to text. And because text can be treated as any, and I manually choose any here. So that is another tip which I have found myself struggling a lot, which I don't want you guys to go through. So almost always choose any. It would be just fine. And choosing text on a number and things like that might throw you an errors at times, which is hard to decipher. Some of these errors are so vague, I have no idea what this really means. So that is one more quirk which I can add on to this. And then, um, so I hope this one was okay. This one was clear. So any other question you guys have about SharePoint connections, the errors that you see. I'm not sure if you guys have come across all the errors. These are the most common errors within the SharePoint that I have seen. Keys did not match, could not find this table, or did you miss a module reference? All that basically means is there is some connection between your last step to the next step. There is a disjoint between that. So keys not matching or could not find a key value. It's not your data itself is wrong. It's just that the way mQuery is written, it does not necessarily need to reference the step before it. It can reference and jump and hoop the line and reference, let's say, out of 5 steps that you have done, fifth one can actually reference the first one if it really needed to and if you really wanted to. However, during that steps that is being written, there is a disjoint in one of them. So when you see that, that is where you see keys did not find or could not find the module reference. That's what they basically that means. So overall, I have not come across any unique error or error messages which is something mind boggling. These are something which are vague still, but you'll get to learn to go through it and understand it, that this what really means, and you'll check your mQuery really well. Other thing that I like to do in the advanced editor is leave the word. Yep, it's on. I actually sometimes name my own columns. No, I don't trust exactly what Power BI is giving me. Not that I don't trust, it's just more intuitive for me. Me being kind of a self-taught mQuery person, so I want to rename my own query to tell me exactly what I'm doing here, what I'm not doing here. So that is other thing I like to do. And you can always put a comment of your own and saying that this is not SQL, this is, and this will just pop out. And whenever you do put a comment, you'll know that okay, something was written, I need to go revisit my query and make use of it over and over and over again. And I do that a lot, especially with my date table, because I like to design my date table from the Power Query standing up, from the first day to last day, converting into a list and expanding it out. So I write a lot of uh, comments there to help me understand in the future date that what I was really thinking at that time. I think that is all I
I
have,
will
Reed.
I will say if you go to the applied steps, right click and select properties, then you also get a visual indicator that tells you that there is a note. So type something into the description. It doesn't matter what it will be. Are you on the, yeah, so type anything in and click OK. What version of Power BI are you on?
I should be on the latest one. I can check.
That should,
I know the one that you're talking about. There's a small icon inside the icon. It's literally a
Yeah,
I know,
and
I
then
was noticing that too. I like, why didn't you show
correct.
me this?
Yeah, I would cancel out of that. So it doesn't need to
Yeah,
be loaded, but yeah. But just go to File. We'll tell you the latest version of Power BI.
it is taking a bit of a time. This is
I'll do a small plug here at the end. We're getting that up. You don't want to go there. You want to go to About. No, it's not. It's not in here anywhere. So go cancel. Exit out of this menu.
wasn't it? I
No,
believe it was. Oh,
you,
right here,
oh yeah, you can
right
get
here.
another spot. Oh,
Yeah,
weird. Huh.
yeah. I have always followed this. I know the about button is there too. For some reason, I always come in
Yeah.
and say, oh, diagnostic, which one is it?
I'm very
So
confused why
Feb
that symbol actually went
2021.
away. So that's because that's been in there for like about 8 months now.
Yes, and that's what I
Hmm.
mean when I write the comment. It tells me, oh, there is a comment indeed.
Yeah, I'm very curious why that disappeared.
Let me add something else.
Yeah, they
Oh, it's here.
for
We are
Teresa,
back.
you're there you go. Yeah, so it's a great way to do that, and you also get it when you show up on the tooltip, as you can see here, and it is a really nice visual indicator now that they added, so you have comments. I used to actually edit the applied step name to put an asterisk at the beginning to be my own visual indicator that there was a comment on that step, but it should be adding the icon like you see there. Um, yeah, and it looks like the symbol's showing for us now, so that's good. If you don't have anything else to know, though, what I do want to do is I'm going to wrap up this session here with a couple of notes. One thing that I wanted to show, because some people asked about it, is let me switch over to my screen. There you go. Yeah, so as of Monday this week, I did just finally launch my course after a bit of time getting it up and published. So for anybody interested, I do have a course now on the Schoolway website, and I'm happy to actually put a link into here. I have a specialty link that I need to grab, so I'll put that into there in just a minute. Here we go. This guy. And I'll drop that in when I'm done. But yeah, basically it focuses on everything from the report perspective of Power BI, meaning like it it's really like kind of the equivalent of a 1 day training that I do, where it really focuses on all the features available in the report perspective. A little bit of light sprinkling in there on design and kind of layout and everything else, but a lot of it is just understanding all the features, all the formatting, where you can apply conditional formatting, what is drill through, the types of drill through, really every like report feature that's available for the end user, so you can know how to build out an impactful report that is as optimized as it can be given your business requirements. Just to mention that there, it will be on sale for $129, marked down from $199 for like the first X number of weeks for like kind of first wave buyers who come across on that. And I can switch back to our screen, but what I'll do is just go ahead and drop that into the chat window a little bit. There you go. Perfect. But otherwise, yeah, Ansh, I really, I probably learned 3 or 4 different little things in Power Query. It's a lot of that stuff is it's a little nuances where, and I'm sure the same with DAX, is there's a lot of different ways to do something correctly, but then you find out, I could do it this way in 5 steps. Well, I can do it this way in 3 steps. And it's the little tweaks that just continuously improve upon certain practices. And there was actually one of the companies that I used to work for. I loved the phrase that they had is be kind to your future self. It's the little things that you can do today that make your life better in the future, like notes and descriptions. So you can come, like if there's a really weird step that in 6 months, I'm not going to remember why I did this like specific step here, add a note to yourself, or use a parameter in changing the data source to, that way you can update one location that updates 10 different queries rather than, it's all those little things that, yeah, you have extra development time today, but it's going to save you loads of development time in the future. So I always appreciate learning those things in Power Query when I can add extra little gotchas and ahas, or I can see those kind of moments that then let me just continue to add and sharpen my tool set that I have in Power Query.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I think same goes here. You just pick up those things, and which actually saves a lot of time and a lot of headache later on. Those small things. So definitely, I second that.
Perfect. And we're just about at the hour. I don't think I see any other questions. People seem to really like a lot of this stuff, and I got many of those like, I didn't even know you could do this kind of a thing. So I think those are the best moments, is where somebody can either have those aha moments or just find some other techniques to do that they just didn't even know were possible,
Thank you so very much to you, Reed, and everyone for first thing again to giving me a chance to present this, and second, I didn't know that what I'm going to present is going to be of use to anyone, but I thought this is what I know, I'm just going to go with that, and I'm glad you guys liked it. I am really happy.
Absolutely. And we'd love to have you back on in the future. And then otherwise, for anybody who's interested, there's info for Ansh is down in the description below if you ever want to, if I can speak for you, like chat with you about anything of some of what you've done. I hope they can like reach out and contact you on LinkedIn.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, definitely. By all means, anytime, any issues or anything, I'm always more than happy to, break our brains together to figure out the answer.
Yep. And I will wrap up a couple other things so make sure I don't miss anybody. Greg, thanks for helping moderate and chatting in the comments. Again, this video in the near future, once Greg posts his videos from day one of the event, they will be down into there. Highly encourage checking out either one. I know Brian Grant, who works for CSG Pro and presented yesterday, does some awesome things with the elements of DAX. He does a lot of great analogies of taking complex topics and whittling them down until it reminds me of like Star Trek, when they would have this big scientific theory and then it's like, oh yeah, and that like it's kind of like overinflated in a balloon, and they would come up with this really clean, simple analogy. And I feel like he has a lot of those things with DAX where it's something complex, oh that's over my head, and then he summarizes it and okay, well said in this perspective, this amount, it makes a ton more sense. So plenty of information on that there, so I'd highly encourage you to check it out. But otherwise, yeah, have a great rest of your morning, afternoon, evening, late night. I'm sure people are tuning in from around the world. And I will see you Friday on my live stream. So
awesome. Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much for watching. Please consider hitting that like and subscribe button. And if you want to help support this channel, take a look at our channel memberships as well. And last but not least, please consider sharing this video on social media to help pass on this awesome content and to help the channel grow. So until next time.